Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today we are doing the Roads Not Taken EP9. And this is a weekly series where we go through underreported or unreported news, stuff that just didn't make it over on the main channel. But it's information that will probably be important later and may shape future events. So it's kind of providing some background context to everything. Okay, so starting off, we're going to be looking at foreign policy. George W. Bush offered advice to Netanyahu on the current situation, because if there's anybody who really understands how to bring peace to the Middle East, it's George W. Bush. The United States has authorized the departure of non-essential personnel from Israel and I believe the West Bank as well. So this is not like a large evacuation. This is telling people who don't have to be there to get out. This is a clear indication that the promised ground offensive is probably coming really soon. Afghanistan was hit with yet another earthquake, the third this week. The quakes have killed more than 1,000 people. My understanding is that the last one wasn't actually as bad. They seem to be kind of tapering off. But the crisis has been overshadowed by other events. So eventually there's going to be a humanitarian issue here that will crop up in the future. Saudi Arabia has put a hold on the talks about the normalization of relations with Israel. If the hold turns out to be permanent or long-lasting, it may put an end to the hopes of a region that is stable because of regional powers, which would eventually lead to a situation where another major world power is stepping in to play policeman. So that's not great news. Okay, moving on to the United States. At the time of filming, the U.S. House of Representatives is still without a speaker, as Republicans struggle to form a coherent message or unite in any way, shape, or form. The current nominee, definitely subject to change, is Jim Jordan. It's worth noting that by my count, he doesn't actually have the votes to win. That might change over the weekend. Maybe they're working the phones. But by my count, he's not there. Now, one of the interesting things is that Mike Rogers has now publicly stated that he's not going to back Jordan. He also publicly seemed pretty open to working with Democrats to achieve a bipartisan solution to a very Republican problem. McCarthy has gone out of his way to try to blame the Democratic Party for the current situation, which is, that's an interesting strategy. We'll see how that plays out. In some good news, a recession coming in the next year is no longer the most widely held belief of economists. This is probably the best news possible for the Biden administration, because while presidents don't actually control the economy, most voters feel like they do, and they tend to vote that way. So for quite some time, actually I believe more than a year, the general consensus was that there was going to be a recession in the next year. And it hasn't happened. Now, the reason for this, some of it is, yes, there's a lot of infrastructure jobs and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff like that that's going on, and that's helping. But another pretty big piece of it is you. You're not panicking, which is kind of what economists expected you to do. The U.S. economy in many ways, shapes and forms, runs on faith. And so far, faith in the economy really hasn't been shaken. So consumer spending and your behaviors are keeping the economy going. Okay. Healthcare workers in California will have a minimum wage of $25 per hour thanks to new legislation signed by Newsom. I feel like that is going to play into some labor disputes later. In a pretty interesting piece of news that may not sound really important at first, but trust me, it is. The American College of Emergency Physicians withdrew their approval for a 2009 paper on excited delirium. This is a term that gets thrown out after somebody dies in police custody, and it's often used as a justification for the death. The removal of this approval means that people can't use the ACEP's kind of endorsement of this concept as a way to bolster their defense case. They were kind of the last holdout. The National Association of Medical Examiners and the AMA have also rejected this term. This is going to matter when it comes to police accountability cases. In a big way. I know it seems weird that just this organization withdrawing their approval of this paper, but this is going to matter in court. Okay, the Republican candidate for governor won in Louisiana, flipping the state from blue to red. On Friday, a Republican New York City councilwoman was arrested after she allegedly brought a firearm to a pro-Palestinian rally at a college there. 17 allegedly bad apples, employees of Broward County Sheriff's Department, have been indicted for COVID relief fraud schemes. In a pretty surprising turn of events in this. The fact that this occurred isn't surprising. What is surprising is that, from what I can tell, the investigation was actually started kind of at the request of the sheriff. If you are familiar with Broward County, the idea that they were taking proactive steps on anything, to be honest, that's surprising. But it appears, if I'm understanding this correctly, the leadership of the sheriff's department kind of got like a hint something was going on and ordered a review of literally everyone in the department. And it has led to 17 indictments. Okay, the governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, is involved in I don't know if I would call it a scandal. A whole lot of questions are being asked about a lectern, a podium for most people. It cost $19,000, and there is apparently a whistleblower that has accused her office of covering up the spending. It's a very strange case, and it's one of those that's so weird. I don't understand. I don't even understand why it would be done. Set aside, okay, let's just assume the governor there is a politician and does shady things. This doesn't even make sense. I don't get it, but it's something that appears to be a little scandal there in Arkansas that is growing rather than receding. In cultural news, Taylor Swift's movie is seeing an opening weekend of about $100 million. Please keep in mind that for whatever reason, large segments of the Republican right have decided that opposing Taylor Swift is going to be good for them. $100 million opening weekend. I am sure that going after somebody of that stature with that loyal a fan base, I am sure that that will not alienate voters in any way. Okay, moving on to environmental news. After years of delay, NASA has a mission underway to go to this asteroid that is heavily metallic. The reason this is interesting is because it has prompted a whole lot of conversations. Now, NASA's going there for research, obviously, but the makeup of the asteroid, if it was brought to Earth, the metals in it would be worth 100,000 quadrillion dollars. This, of course, has prompted all of the space capitalists and got their attention, and they are very interested in bringing it back to do that, to make the 100,000 quadrillion dollars, proving once and for all that the online capitalist gurus definitely understand the basic rules of supply and demand. And if there is that much of things that are rare, and the rarity is why they're expensive, and you bring it there, it is no longer rare, so the price would then go down substantially. Anyway, the FAA is saying that by 2035, thousands of fragments from Starlink satellites falling back to Earth could survive re-entry each year. The satellites are supposed to burn up. They're not supposed to have fragments coming down. If these numbers are right, it would raise the chance of a person being killed by a falling satellite to about a 60% chance per year. It is worth noting that SpaceX has basically said the FAA is wrong and they have serious errors in their analysis. I would imagine we're going to hear more about this, and there's probably going to be dueling studies and analysis going on, and we'll eventually find out. I, for one, hope the FAA is wrong, because there's already a whole lot of those satellites up there. Moving on to some odd news. I don't know if this is really odd, but it's rare. A ring of fire solar eclipse occurred over the Americas. The next one viewable from this region is in 2046. But there will be a total solar eclipse that will be visible from Mexico, the U.S., and Canada on April 8th, 2024. So relatively close. If you miss this, there's an opportunity to see a different celestial event coming. In really odd news, truly odd news, in Zambia, archaeologists have reportedly discovered the oldest wooden structure. It's reported to date back 476,000 years. If you're not familiar with the timeline, that's before Homo sapiens. That is before Homo sapiens. And they also believe that they found tools at the site. So either they're wrong about the age, or we're going to have to start looking at our early ancestors in an entirely different way. Obviously, there's going to be more study, and there will definitely be more news about this, but this might be one of those things that rewrites history books. Okay, so moving on to the Q&A. When will we have a clear picture of whether or not the war will expand? Once ground operations start. What you need to look for is once the ground operations begin, you need to look at Iran's rhetoric. Because what matters, as weird as this sounds, what matters isn't what happens. It's how Iran perceives it. It very easily could spiral. It could expand. They have said that, a ground operation is just out of the question. That's probably not true. That's probably not really their red line. But how they perceive those events will definitely shape a whole lot of other organizations and entities. That's going to be the moment we find out. If they don't say anything, there's not a lot of wild rhetoric, there's probably not a big risk of it expanding. If they're kind of upset, you'll probably see other non-state actors kind of get involved. If the rhetoric is really fiery, there may be state on state, that's really, really bad for just everybody. Because if that starts, it could expand even further. So right now, what really matters as far as whether or not it expands is how Iran perceives those events. Nobody else's opinion really matters at the moment. Okay. I'm a Jewish leftist. I've heard my Jewish friends say things about how to deal with things that are just horrible. And I've had leftist friends say things about us that I don't know if I can ever forgive. How am I supposed to look at people like this the same ever again? Yeah, there's going to be a lot of this. I don't know. I don't know. There are moments when people respond to world events, and how they respond alters the way other people see them. And in some instances, it could be something as simple as a tweet that is just so out of line for your beliefs that there's really not a way you can look at them the same way again. And sometimes the person might show that they were caught up in the moment and they said something they didn't mean. But generally speaking, you didn't give specifics here, but when people advocate for things that should just be totally off the table, remember it. Because it indicates a lot of other things about people. I mean, I feel for you. I just... How am I supposed to look at people like this the same ever again? I don't know that you can. I don't know that you can. I'm sure some will do things that show that that's not really who they are. But I have a feeling that a whole lot of people are showing who they are. It's a lot like the Kavanaugh hearings. During that period, I got a lot of messages from women talking about male family members or male friends. And the statements they made, they forever altered their relationship because you can't look at the person the same way again. This is one of the reasons that it's important to remember that not every thought that you have is suitable for public consumption. You can be angry and you can think things, but putting them out for a whole lot of people, it takes a lot of work to get back from that. So I don't have any advice for you. I have no idea how you can or if you even want to. This may be one of those things where you're just venting, and that's fine too. But I would imagine right now, as far as spectators, those who are not actively involved in the situation, a Jewish leftist is probably in one of the worst positions. You're going to get a lot of cross-talk. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that one. What's your Halloween special going to be this year? I haven't decided. I have not decided. I haven't picked a topic or anything yet. So if you have any suggestions, feel free to put them down below. Who should be the speaker? Your personal opinion on what would be best politically, not what's likely. Fair enough. What's best politically? I mean, I guess that would depend on your politics. For most people in the United States, the best thing would be for a centrist coalition of Republicans and Democrats to put somebody up. That would be the best thing politically for the majority of people. You're not going to get a progressive speaker. It seems unlikely that a far-right speaker is going to come through. So the real options that would actually be on the table would be a centrist coalition or a moderate right Republican. Out of those, I would choose the centrist coalition. There is a slim chance, because now you have them saying things publicly now, that the discord within the Republican Party leads some to actually cross over and go to Jeffries. I don't know if it's going to be the votes necessary, though. Do I think a centrist coalition is likely? I don't know. At this point, we're kind of in uncharted territory here. The Republican Party is so just broken and incapable of accomplishing basic tasks because of their reliance on social media hot takes that I don't know that there's going to be an internal solution. I can't think of anybody in the party that would actually be able to rally the party. So I don't really know what's likely. I can tell you, as situations arise, it seems pretty unlikely that Jordan's going to get it. But as far as a final outcome, I don't know. But it needs to be worked out pretty quickly, because the clock is ticking on a whole lot of different things. Okay. I'm a new YouTuber. I just qualified for the brand deal thing. You've repeatedly said you don't do them. Is there some downside I'm not seeing? It depends on your content. So on the main channel, you can't add 30 seconds to 90 seconds of ad into one of those videos. Some of those videos are only 3.5 minutes long. If it was me, I would only do things that add value for the people watching you. That's, if you want my advice, that's what I would do. If you are, I can't think of here. Okay, so right now, YouTube has that little shopping thing, right? The little button that pops up every once in a while in the videos. You can tag products, okay? I've used it to showcase shirts or put little things that were Easter eggs and stuff like that. But recently on this channel, well, I don't know about recently, but on this channel, I did that review of heart tools because they're really inexpensive. They're good for relief work. It wasn't sponsored. And the shopping thing, I don't think that company is involved in it, so you couldn't tag them. If a situation existed where you were going to do something like that, like this is a video you're gonna make, and that company wants to help with it, that's one thing. Going out of your way to make content to cater to a company, it may not fit with your channel, but you don't say what your channel is. Like if you do makeup reviews, then yeah, do them all day, But if it's a political channel, if it's a news channel, if it's a philosophy channel, it has to be something that you would want to watch on a channel that you are watching. That would be my advice. There's nothing inherently wrong with them. They just don't fit for me. I would run your advertising and your content decisions, just always run it through the filter of, would the viewer like this? If the answer is no, don't do it. If the answer is yes, do it. Going back to that question, I understand that right now there's a lot of hot takes. There's a lot of political discussion. There's a lot of people staking out their positions and all of that. And that's fine. I would suggest that not just morally, but for the sake of your friends, your own personal relationships, just as a general rule, don't collectivize anybody based on the actions of whoever rules over them. I feel like not collectivizing people on their race or ethnicity, I feel like that's a given. But in case not, I'll go ahead and say that too. But collectivizing an entire people based off of their ruler, the government, the authorities that are over them, you're probably going to sweep a lot of people up into that generalization that you don't really want to be there, that you don't really mean that about. And some of them might be your friends until you say it. Just think back to the Trump years. Would you want to be identified as his supporters? Would you want to be viewed through the actions of Trump? Probably not. This is way more serious than that. I know that social media discourse being what it is, getting that position out there and going through and just constantly getting that hot take out, that's how you get your engagement. When there's actual engagements going on, it's probably not the best policy. Anyway, so that's a quick recap of the stuff that was missed, and provides the context, gives you the information that you need, and having the right information will make all of the difference. Y'all have a good night.